Alrighty, so let's go ahead. I'm going to select the camera and the light and delete them. And I'm just going to go ahead. I find this one handy to use a reference image for, so I definitely encourage that for the actual challenge itself. And so we'll just bring in this companion cube. I'm going to go G, Y, and 7 to just push it back an arbitrary amount, so we've got a bit of space to model with. And so with our default cube here, I'm just going to scale it up just until we see the grey parts meet the black parts of the reference image there. If we tap into edit mode, select everything and subdivide once, what we can do is we can just select this top left hand corner here, go Control I, sorry, did I say corner? I meant face. Control I and then delete all the other faces, because we want to do this really efficiently, right? Like, I don't want to model each individual segment and face, because that's just going to take so long. So I want to model the least amount as possible, right? And we can even cut this face in half here, but we'll get to that in a second. So with just this one face, I want you to select everything and let's subdivide this. And I want to do 9 subdivisions here. Now I want to do 9 because we get this edge and this edge here. And I'll show you why this is handy, because it lies pretty much exactly in between both of the gaps here, which means that we get everything nice and uniform and correct in shape across every part of this model. So what we can do is we can select that edge, this edge, and then the edges that make up the perimeter. So we get something like this. Control I, Control X, and now we're just left with exactly the topology we need. Then with these 2 internal edges, just select them, Control B, and we'll just match this up to the size of the reference image, somewhere like that. And now we can actually cut this in half, as I said earlier. So let's use the knife tool. So I'll cut at the top left-hand vertex and bring it down to the middle or the bottom right-hand vertex here. Cut that down. And then we can just select these outer vertices, delete the verts, and now we only need to worry about this much of the model for the modeling process, which is really handy. But to sort of give us a little bit more of a complete picture while we're doing it, let's just go ahead, Shift A, let's bring in a plane axis as an empty. And with our little triangle here, let's bring in a mirror modifier. And we'll set the mirror object to our empty 001. So remember, our reference image is just called empty, and then our axes arrows are 001. And then what we can do with the empty 001, we can go R, Y to rotate about the Y axis, and then negative 45. And now we've got our square back, and I just want to enable clipping as well. Cool, so now let's worry about this circular detail in the middle here. So let's go Shift A, and we'll bring in a cylinder. And let's just change the vert count to 48. So this is just something I figured out through trial and error, but I will explain why we're using 48 in a moment. And we'll go R, X, and 90. And then let's just scale this up so that it matches that inner circular shape there, so something like that. And then let's just pull it through on the Y-axis just until the plane here and the cylinder are clipping. So I'm going to select the cylinder and then select the plane, and I'm using bool tools here, so if you don't already have it enabled, I'd suggest enabling it. If not, we can also do it manually, but I'm just going to use bool tools for the sake of brevity, so Control Shift and B and difference. If you don't want to enable bool tools by any capacity, that's also fine. You can just obviously manually add in the boolean operation here, and then with your cylinder, you could just change the viewport display to be display as bounds, and it does the exact same thing. Bool tools just sort of speeds up the process. Cool, so let's give ourselves a little bit more of a complete picture here, and I'm just going to go to our modifiers. Let's get another mirror modifier, and we'll mirror it on the X and the Z axes, and so now I've got a bit more of a complete face. And I'll just put the boolean at the top of the stack. Now, I'm going to apply the boolean. Don't you do it. I'm just going to do it to explain why we've used 48 verts on that cylinder. So the reason it works quite nicely is because we get a vertex sitting here, which roughly lines up with our model, and then, well, I mean, these verts were from the bevel that we did earlier, but we also get one that sits just above where there's a little bit of detail is here, so we can simply go Control R later down the line, and that roughly lines up, so it all just worked really well. Once again, I didn't know 48 just by the top of my head. It didn't just come to me in an epiphany. It was just trial and error, so that's the only reason. Cool. So actually, I am going to apply the boolean now. Sorry, I probably should have just had you guys do that straight away as well. And we're going to do exactly as I said. So actually, sorry, first of all, we'll just dissolve this vert because we don't need it. Then we can go Control R, we can just add that vertex in there and that will come in handy in just a bit. And I'm also just going to go ahead and space out those verts in between there as well. And probably just do the same for here. Cool, alright. Actually, the only other thing I want to do, is let's select this edge here. And let's subdivide it. We'll do it twice. And the reason this works nicely is because now we get this vertex sitting here, right on the corner of our reference. And we can just go ahead and add in the triangle here. Don't worry, this triangle actually works really nicely for the way we want everything to resolve, so it's not the end of the world, trust me. And while we're at it, let's just go ahead and cut in some more topology here. So I'm just going to go Control R, I'm going to cut in 2 verts on this outer edge here. So we can just start to connect this up with nice quads. And then on the inside here, I'm just going to go Control R, and I'm going to cut in 3 verts. And then I can just start to join this up quite nicely as well. And I can just Control X and dissolve that vert because we don't need it. Cool. Alright, so let's go ahead and select these 3 faces here. And let's change our pivot point to the 3D cursor. Just make sure your 3D cursor is at the center here. So if it's moved somewhere, if you've accidentally clicked, it's all good. Just press Shift and C and that will put it back to the center. And so let's go E to extrude, and let's just scale out just until this reaches the outer perimeter of our reference image where the black and the white parts meet. So just there. Then in vertex select mode, I'm going to select this top left-hand vertice, Shift S and cursor to selected. And then I'm just going to select these inner verts here, scale once more, and I'm just looking at the left-hand point just until it lines up with the corner. And so that profile nicely lines up now. And so then we can do something similar with this little piece down here. Oops, in face select mode, so if I just grab these, just select those. We'll go Shift and C to return our 3D cursor to the center. Going to go E to extrude, and then S and Shift and Z to scale on everything but the Z axis. And I'm just going to scale this out, and this time I'm looking at the curve of our reference image here. So, sorry, I'm looking at these edges just till they line up. I know this is sort of protruding out a little bit further, but once we bevel it, it'll line up nicely. You could argue the fact that we should probably do the same for the outer edge as well, but I don't think it's too big of a problem. And let's just do a little bit of topology cleanup here. So I'm just going to go Control R, let's cut in a loop. Oops. Well, actually, this isn't cleanup, so to speak. This is sort of forward planning. So we'll add this loop in, and then let's grab both of these edges here. We'll go double tap G, E, and F, just so it's pointing towards the inner edge. And I'm just going to move this in so that like both of these edges have roughly the same sort of curvature. It's just going to add nicer support to this edge here once we get our subdivision going. And then we can go Control R, cut a loop in through here, use our knife tool. Oh, actually, no, sorry, my bad. We want to use our knife tool to just cut this vertex to that one there. And that resolves in quads. I know we've got that triangle, but as I said, it actually works quite nicely for us. And then let's start to fill in the middle here. So I'm just going to grab this vertex, and I might just change our pivot point back to the bounding box. E to extrude, I'm just going to push it into the center. Oops, I should probably enable clipping on both of the mirror modifiers. So I'll just bring that back just into the X so it's sitting in the center. And then I'm going to grab this vertex here and that one in the center, F to create an edge. And then just select the rest of the inner vert, F, and we can fill in a face. Then with that, let's go ahead, use I to do an inset, and then we'll press B to do an inset to bounds. And then we can just make this circular shape match up with the circle in the middle here. And then it's really nice, so these little pink lines here, we can get those to work pretty well. So let's just select between these points, and I'm just going to use the space operation. And that roughly gets us a straight line here. It's not perfect, so I'm just going to clean it up. I'm just going to select that edge, S, Z, and 0. And it still doesn't exactly line up with our reference image, but it's close enough, so that'll do. And so let's select this little pie segment piece here. I'm just going to go E to extrude, bring this out on the Y a bit. Just an arbitrary amount. I've got no idea how far to pull it out, but I'm just going to save that. Select this outer edge, Control and B. And just give that a nice little bit of a bevel there. And then I'm just also going to do an inset just so we add a bit of a support loop as well. Cool. The final little bit of detail that we need is just this inset here. So I'm going to go E to extrude, push that back in on the Y, give it a little bit of depth. And then I'm going to do an inset. So just a little bit here. And then I'm going to select the outer edges, Control X. So then that sort of doesn't make it a 90-degree angle, it sort of gives it a little bit of a slope there. Select this face again, do another inset, and this one's actually going to be our supporting edge there. Cool, alright, so let's go ahead and shade smooth, and we can also bring in a subdivision surface modifier. I'm going to crack that up to 4. And so I can see some problems here. We've got an internal edge, or face, sorry, not internal edge. So I'm just going to delete that. And I'm also going to delete these faces on the outside here because they will inherently become internal faces as we create the rest of the cube. So I'm just going to delete those. And let's go ahead and just crease up all of the edges that need creasing. So just all of our hard edges. These ones here, also crease those. Those ones there. I think that should be everything, so let's go Shift E 0.55. And let's have a look at this subdiv back on. Cool, so I think that's pretty good. The only thing I don't like is I just don't like this edge here. It's just not very sharp compared to the rest of them. So easy fix, I'm just going to go Control R. I'm just going to cut in 2 loops through the middle here. It also just pushes in a little bit more support on this inner edge as well, which I think will look nice. And so I think that's looking much nicer now. Cool, so before we continue, I'm just going to Alt-select this outer edge here, go Control E and mark a sharp, not because I actually want the edge to be sharp, but it's just going to help us to select all of the edges that we need to bevel after we start applying our modifiers here. I'm actually just going to hide the cylinder because it's kind of confusing. Cool, so let's go ahead, I'm going to use Control A and apply both of those mirrors there. And then we've got a little bit of a problem. You can probably see the circle isn't completely circular. So I'm just going to dissolve these edges. It's not important to dissolve these edges, it just helps me in selecting just the quarters of the circle there. And then I'm going to select the outer 2 edges, and then just using the Loop Tools circle operation, I'll just fix that up. I'm not too worried about doing a circle operation on the bottom here. I mean, I could, but I feel like it might distort those shapes. In all my practice, I actually haven't tried this because I thought it would, but it might not. Circle. It's not too bad. It kind of moves the position a bit. So yeah, I'm not going to do a circle operation on this one. I'm just going to leave it as is. I think it will be fine. Cool. And so now we can actually make the rest of the cube. So I'm just going to turn off the subdiv to make it more performant. And so let's go Shift D, R, Z, 90. And then before you do anything else, go Shift R and then Shift R again, and that will repeat our operation. And then we can just fill in the top and bottom caps. So I'm just going to go Shift D, R, X, and 90. So that's our bottom cap. And then Shift D, R, X, and negative 90 to fill in the top. Then I'm just going to go ahead, Shift Select all of these objects. And then use Control J to join everything back together. We can tab back into edit mode, select everything, and dissolve by distance, or merge by distance, sorry. And then these sharps come in handy now because we can just select one, Shift G, select similar by sharpness. And then if we go back to looking at our reference image, we can just use Control and B to do a bevel. And just have that nicely line up with our reference material. So while we've got this selected, to just make it easier, I'm going to go Shift and H just to isolate this area. In face select mode, I'm just going to select one triangle, Shift and G, and we'll do similar polygon sides. And then Shift E 0.55. Sorry, I think I said Shift E before, but it was Shift G, sorry, to select similar. And then I'll select one sharp edge, sorry, Shift G, similar sharpness. We'll go Control E and clear the sharp, and then Shift E 0.55 to crease them up. And with that, we've now got a nice looking companion cube here. So you can leave it here if you want. You've pretty much got the end result. This is what you came here for, but just as a little added extra, I'm going to go ahead and we can model in the little love heart shape as well, but you don't have to stick around for this part if you don't want to. So how I'm going to approach it, I'm just going to select this vertex here, Shift S, cursor to selected, and I might actually hide the companion cube, make it easier, and I'm just going to delete that empty because we don't need it anymore. And what's the best way? I might bring in a circle, I might just, we'll go with 32 verts, R, X, 90 degrees. Just going to scale this in, and I'm just going to try to position this on the side just so I don't have to worry about manually doing the circular side of everything. So something like that's probably too round, but that'll be alright for what I want for the time being. And I think I might just delete all of those verts. And then I'll sort of just do a little bit more manual work here. So actually, before I extrude that vert, let's just go ahead, chuck in a mirror modifier. We'll go clipping, and we'll do it along the Z-axis. Oh wait, no, hang on, sorry, my bad. I need to Shift-S, put our 3D cursor there, and then origin to 3D cursor, then along the X-axis, then it works. And then I can extrude this down to the bottom. And this isn't quite exactly where I want, but I'm just going to use O for proportional editing, G, and just sort of scroll in a little bit. Going to adjust the shaping a bit. I think that sort of helps with what we were going for. I'm going to go Control R, oops, O to turn off proportional editing. And I'm just going to bring this in a bit. Something like that. It doesn't look right at the moment, but then if I use Control Shift and B to bevel the vertice, I'm going to add in some extra loops. What's that? An extra 6 segments. That works. And then what I might do is just select... Actually, what if I select the whole thing and relax? That doesn't work too nicely. Let's just select between these points, do a space operation, and then I might just do a relax operation on that corner there. And then I might actually do a relax on the whole thing, minus the first and last verts, just to help sort of smooth everything out. Cool, I think that works well. I'm going to go ahead, just F to fill in a big n-gon, and then I'm going to use I to do an inset, and that's not going to work because it's trying to inset the bounds. So let's extrude so we can add some topology in, because we want a bit of depth on this anyway. So we'll go to about there. And then, actually before I do an inset, because I kind of want to put a nice little bevel on this just so it catches a bit of light on the edges. But I just want to do it with one segment because I think that will look a little bit nicer. So I'm just going to go somewhere like that. Then I'll select this massive n-gon that we've got. Just press I to do an inset. That's doing an inset to bounds, which is nice. And I'll just do some very, very simple topology cleanup down here. So I'm just going to do a space operation to just even those out. And I might do the same down here, sort of space. Actually, I probably don't need to. It's probably not too big of a deal. I might just do an edge slide. Just eyeball it instead. And I'm not too worried about the n-gon here, but I'll just do a little bit of cleanup so that the subdivision doesn't resolve too terribly. Because we can definitely have n-gons on flat surfaces like this, but I've just lost the words for what I'm trying to say. Even flat surface like this, it can still throw some issues with the subdivision if it's an n-gon this large. And then, did I cut in enough? No, I don't think I did. I think I need... Because what, there's that, and then there's an additional 3, so I think I need 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then this should work, I believe. Cut these in. This doesn't need to be quad-based topology at all, but I'm just doing it for the hell of it. And then we can go shade smooth and just crease up these edges, Shift D 0.55, and I'll also need to crease up these ones here and these ones here, Shift D 0.55. Subdivision surface modifier, crank that up to 4. That looks nice. I can apply the mirror modifier. Yeah, hang on. That doesn't look great. Let's just delete the faces of the back here because we don't need those for what we're doing. I'll hide everything. Cool. And then let's just go ahead, put this back in the middle. I'm going to go just with our 3D cursor as the transform pivot point, Shift D, R, Z, 90, and then Shift R, and then Shift D, R, Y, 90, to put that at the top, and then Shift D, R, Y, negative 90, put that at the bottom. And now we've got all that going. I'm just going to select everything, Shift select the cube, Control J, and make it all one mesh, and that looks pretty nice. Right, there you go. That's how you can make a companion cube in Blender. Hopefully it's a rather simple explanation for it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something from it, and I'll see you all in the next one.